What's going on, everyone? I'm back, and you know what time it is. It is week 4 in the NFL, and as always, I have got my game-by-game picks outright against the spread and my locks of the week, so let's get right into it. Kicking things off, we have the Minnesota Vikings at the LA Rams, what should be a very exciting Thursday night football game for once. And with the Vikings, they find themselves at 1-1-1. Very disappointing start when you look at it in terms of what we expected from the Vikings, especially after their performance versus the Buffalo Bills where they got routed in week 3. Honestly, I don't think many people saw that coming. Probably one of the biggest surprises in week 3, if not probably going to end up being one of the biggest surprises all season. While the LA Rams still remain as one of the undefeated teams in the NFL at 3-0. Now they have a home game, and they've been hitting on all cylinders, offensively, defensively when they need to. Now, speaking of defensive efforts, first and foremost, I do want to say I don't think this will be a game where the defenses show out too much. I think there's just too much firepower offensively. If I had to give an edge to any one of these defenses, I'd probably say the Rams, just because this is a home game. I too think that home crowd is going to play a little bit into this, rattle maybe the Vikings offensively a little bit, just enough to give the Rams a slight edge. I realize, guys like Aqib Talib, Marcus Peters, Aqib Talib is on IR, while Marcus Peters might be limited in that game, so that is a factor. Another reason why I do think this will be a high-scoring affair offensively. I could see it going into the 20s, into the 30s. Definitely both quarterbacks aren't afraid to sling it, especially Kirk Cousins. Both have plenty of playmakers around them. The reason I do like the Rams in this contest, it starts with the running back differential, because Todd Gurley, one of the best running backs in the NFL right now, if not the best, is playing for the Rams, while Dalvin Cook, dealing with the injury, is set to come back this week, but I do think he will be less than 100%, so I have to give the edge to the Rams in the running game, and I do think that'll become a factor as the game goes on. When they have to go ahead and get some time off the clock. And like I said, defensively, I do think the Rams probably have one or two more stops in their arsenal compared to the Vikings, who the Vikings actually have been a little bit underwhelming defensively. It'll be interesting to see what happens after this game. I won't hold it too much against them because I do anticipate this being one of those games where it's just extremely high scoring. It'll be interesting to see, however, what happens later on in the season for the Vikings. But when it's all said and done, I like the Rams to go ahead and win this game outright. The spread, -6.5 for the Rams, so they are favored. That is a little bit too high for me. I think it'll be less than a touchdown differential. We'll see, however. But for that reason, I like the Minnesota Vikings on the spread. Moving on, we have got the Cincinnati Bengals at the Atlanta Falcons. Bengals 2-1 after losing their first game of the season to the Carolina Panthers last week, while the Falcons 1-2 after another heartbreaking loss, this time to their divisional opponent, the Saints, in overtime, where Drew Brees just led a game-winning touchdown drive that he didn't let anyone else touch the football on. But the fact of the matter is, this game, I think, has very high scoring potential and can be another extremely entertaining contest. The Bengals potentially might have a limited A.J. Green out there, as he missed the second half of the game versus the Panthers with that groin injury. Reports are that he will play, though. If he is limited, though, obviously, that is a strike against the Bengals. He is their best pass-catching option, even with the emergence of a guy like Boyd. Mixon will still be unavailable this week, but we saw it last week. Giovanni Bernard more than capable of handling the load as the lead running back for the Bengals. On the other side, we've got the Atlanta Falcons, who absolutely exploded, led by Matt Ryan and Calvin Ridley last week. Now, where things will get interesting here is defensively, because especially with the Falcons, they've been decimated by injuries. The Bengals didn't look that great defensively last week. That's why I think this will be a very high-scoring affair. And ultimately, I give the edge to the team that I think is more well-balanced offensively. To me, that is the Atlanta Falcons. I think they have the slightly better quarterback. I think they've got more playmaking pass catchers. And for that reason, I like them at home to go ahead, get this victory outright against the spread. Falcons at -5.5. And ultimately, I do think they can cover that spread. I think they have about a touchdown differential kind of edge on the Bengals, so I will go ahead and take the Falcons on the spread as well. Next, we have the Buffalo Bills at the Green Bay Packers. The Bills at 1-2 after shocking the NFL world and beating the Vikings in Week 3. Not only beating them, but dominating them the entire game. While the Packers, disappointing loss to the Redskins, where that was detailed by several missed opportunities offensively in a guy like Randall Cobb especially, along with another, yet again, questionable roughing the passer penalty versus Clay Matthews. Now, the question here is, will the Bills be able to go ahead, do the same, shock the NFL world yet again 2 weeks in a row? And look, if I was a betting man, I'd have to say no. Unfortunately, as great of a feel-good story as Week 3 was for the Buffalo Bills, I think it was a fluke more than anything else. The Vikings couldn't get out of their own way. They couldn't do anything defensively. And look, even though the Packers aren't, a defensive juggernaut, there is something to say about having a rookie quarterback go on the road, play at Lambeau Field for the first time. And when he does, he's going to go up against one of the greatest of all times in Aaron Rodgers offensively. It's going to be tough to go ahead and compete and go head-to-head versus Rodgers for Josh Allen. Packers definitely have more offensive playmakers, and I realize these were things that I said for the Vikings last week. But look, like I said, if I were a betting man, I have to go with the Green Bay Packers here. Don't overthink this one. They are a better all-around team in every facet of the game. Give them the edge here to win outright at home. No question about it. On the spread, Packers minus 10.5. So that reflects the thinking here behind the outright pick as well. I do think, even though it is a little bit high, I think the Packers can go ahead and win this game by around 13 points. So I'm picking the Packers on the spread as well. Continuing on, we have got the Tampa Bay Bucks at the Chicago Bears. Both these teams at 2-1. Both these teams at the top of their respective divisions, believe it or not. Something that not a lot of people would have predicted at this point in time, but nonetheless, this is where we find ourselves. The Bucks last week, man, Fitzmagic almost did it again, gave them a chance to win it at the end of the game, but ultimately, just too many mistakes early on in the game, too many missed opportunities for the Bucks. That's what ended up costing them the game, even though Fitzpatrick was able to air it out versus that suspect Steelers secondary, while the Bears went ahead and, they got that ugly victory versus the Cardinals. But let's be honest, that's what these victories will be for the Bears, via dominating defensive efforts, but they will be ugly. This is pretty similar, if you think about it, funny enough, to what we saw back in the Rex Grossman days. A dominating defense for the Bears, and you have an offense that you hope can get you enough points on a week-to-week basis to keep you in the games. Ultimately, I think this will be a formula that can get the Bears the victory this week because, look, defensively, I think the Bucks can be exploited, and we've seen it before. Ryan Fitzpatrick can be that turnover-prone quarterback when he has a lot of pressure coming his way. And that's what the Bears do best. Let's be honest. They apply pressure led by Khalil Mack. And I think this will be a low-scoring affair, maybe 15 to 20 range. I think it'll be really exciting, really entertaining contest because you've got one strength versus the other. The Bucks offense that can air it out really well versus a Bears defense that applies really good pressure but has some question marks in the secondary. But like I said, ultimately I think this will be a low-scoring affair. And honestly, when it's that case scenario, that benefits the Bears. The lower scoring the game, the better it is for the Bears, and I think the Bears have the advantage here. I like them to go ahead and win this game. I don't think that Bucks defense will be able to do enough to rattle Mitchell Trubisky. Even though, I'm not a fan of that Bears offense, I think they'll be able to do enough to go ahead and put up some points versus the Bucks. That'll get them the victory, so I like the Bears outright on the spread. Bears minus 2.5, really close, but when it's all said and done, I'll take the Bears. I think they can go ahead and win by at least a field goal. Next, we have the Detroit Lions at the Dallas Cowboys, both these teams at 1-2. The Lions, however, were victorious last week after an impressive effort versus the New England Patriots of all teams. And offensively, they were able to do a lot of great things, especially on the rushing front. They finally got that 100-yard rusher in Kerryon Johnson after several seasons of not even being close, while the Dallas Cowboys went ahead, went up to Seattle, and had a lot more troubles there. And they just have so many issues offensively. It's pretty easy to see. Dak Prescott isn't exactly progressing as they would have liked. But, that's not all his fault because those pass catchers right now just aren't enough for the Cowboys. Ezekiel Elliott has to be the guy. I don't think he's getting enough carries. Maybe that's precipitated by the fact that he has those offensive line issues with Frederick gone at the center position. But right now, I just have no faith in that offense and anyone other than Ezekiel Elliott. So for that reason, I like the Lions in this game. You know, as good as the Cowboys defense can be at times, the Lions offense will be better. I think they're going to wear down the Cowboys. And if the Lions can score more than 20 points, it's tough for me to see the Cowboys keeping up with them. So I like the Lions outright. Cowboys actually favored in this game, -2.5. So the spread pretty easy for me here, going the Lions. Moving on, we have got the Philadelphia Eagles at the Tennessee Titans. Both teams 2-1. Both teams coming off victories. Eagles with Carson Wentz back in the lineup, able to hang on, beat the Colts, while the Titans, man, they are just the kryptonite for the Jacksonville Jaguars. They beat them twice last year. They beat them again this week. Doesn't matter who they put in at quarterback. They're going to find a way to beat the Jaguars, it seems like. Low-scoring affair, but they got it done. Very impressive. Now, this week, however, I do think the story will be different because that Philadelphia offense compared to what the Jaguars had without Leonard Fournette, Carson Wentz versus Blake Bortles, I like the Eagles more so for sure. You know, both these defenses are good enough where I think they can apply pressure on the opposing quarterback. Ultimately, I think the defensive efforts are going to be somewhat of a wash. Comes down to offensive output, and I'd much rather have Carson Wentz and the squad he has around him than Marcus Mariota, who, you know, had to come in due to injuries. And will he be 100% in this game? You know, he did start out week 3 sitting, so that'll be something to monitor. I like the Eagles more so right now, primarily because of the Carson Wentz factor. I realize he probably isn't 100%, but I'd rather go ahead, have Carson Wentz. I don't think Mariota is 100% either. So for that reason, I do think this will probably be a lower scoring affair in the 20s, low 20s, but I do like the Philadelphia Eagles. On the spread, Titans +3.5. I think the Eagles can go ahead, get a victory, more than 3 points, so give me the Eagles on the spread. Next, we have an AFC divisional clash, Houston Texans at the Indianapolis Colts. Both these teams underperforming right now. Texans 0-3, Colts 1-2, but on paper, I do think the Texans have more talent here. You know, offensively, Hopkins, Miller, Fuller, Watson coming back. Then defensively, they have plenty of big names as well. It's just that offensive line right now isn't playing well. For the Colts, even though they're 1-2, they've had a chance to go ahead and win the contest that they've found themselves in up until this point. Week 1, if it wasn't for a late fumble by Jack Doyle, they could win that game. Last week, you know, questionable penalties thrown against the Indianapolis Colts to the benefit of the Philadelphia Eagles, but nonetheless, the Colts 1-2, I think they have a better chance of winning this game. This is a home game. Usually with these divisional clashes, when it's close, I like to give the edge to the home team and say it'll end up being a split series. And as big of a cliche as it sounds, I still think the Texans are still learning how to win football games, how to close out a game, and I got to give the edge to the Colts at home. You know, even though defensively the Colts have their struggles, I think offensively they'll be able to do enough, giving them the edge for the home factor as well. I think it'll be a low-scoring game. I think it'll be a game that's decided late, but I give the edge to the Colts outright. On the spread, pretty much reflects that pick'em game, -0.5 point for the Colts. So for that reason, I like Indianapolis there as well. Continuing on, we've got another AFC divisional clash, Miami Dolphins at the New England Patriots. And look, Dolphins, believe it or not, still undefeated at 3-0, while the Patriots 1-2, 2 games back of the Dolphins. But look, even though they have 2 losses, I'm not terribly worried about the Patriots. You know, we've seen this before. They start out a little bit slow in September, and then they cruise to the playoffs at the end of the season. And I do think this will probably end up being the turning point for the Patriots, where they figure it out and they go on a little bit of a run. Unfortunately for the Dolphins, I don't think they're as good as their record indicates. I don't think they've played a team as good as the Patriots, especially offensively up until this point. And I think a lot of what they do successfully with Tannehill getting those big plays to a guy like Kenny Stills, I think the Patriots are going to be able to focus in on that, take that away from them. And ultimately, this comes down to, you know, Brady versus Tannehill. Who would you rather have? For me, it's Brady every single day, 10 out of 10 times. So, look, give me the Patriots at home. This is a divisional opponent they know well. And honestly, I could see this being a blowout for the Patriots where they win big. So I like the Patriots outright. On the spread, -6.5. Like I said, I expect at least a double-digit win for the Patriots, so give me the Patriots to cover. Next, we have the New York Jets at the Jacksonville Jaguars. Jets 1-2, Jaguars 2-1. With the Jets, you know, tough, close loss versus the Cleveland Browns and fellow rookie in Baker Mayfield. Ultimately, Sam Darnold just made a couple too many mistakes. Unfortunately, the road does not get easier for him here because he goes up against an elite Jaguars defense. As much as I like Darnold, as much as I like Anunwa, I actually like Darnold more so than I like Blake Bortles. But look, the fact of the matter is, he's still a rookie. We've seen it. He's going to have his ups and downs. And versus this defense, I think they'll be able to shut down his top weapons, and I think they're going to be able to get to him, force turnovers. I think it's going to be a long day for the Jets. And offensively for the Jaguars, even though they haven't looked good these past couple of weeks, well, they are finally getting Leonard Fournette back, and I do think that's going to go a long way, taking pressure off of Blake Bortles and them returning to an offense that is a lot more sustainable, able to put up some more points. They'll be led by their defense here, make no mistake about it. I like the Jaguars to go ahead, win comfortably at home. The spread -7.5. I do think they'll be able to get a double-digit margin of victory versus Sam Darnold, the rookie, who's going to face that elite defense. I see several turnovers where the Jaguars will get points off of. Give me the Jaguars to cover the spread. Moving on, we've got the Cleveland Browns at the Oakland Raiders. Browns won 1-1, but more importantly, Cleveland, you got your first victory in about 2 years. Congratulations. On top of that, you got yourself a new quarterback, courtesy of Baker Mayfield, leading that victory last week versus the Jets. Now he gets an Oakland Raiders squad that's 0-3 that can find a pass rush to save its life. Cough, cough. I wonder why. Khalil Mack probably not being there has something to do with it. But also doesn't help that the Raiders blow leads left and right. They just can't hold on to a lead. But again, that goes back to their defense. They just don't have enough firepower there. And Baker Mayfield gets a decent matchup here. I think you'll have, a long time to go ahead, find his targets. That can be a new quarterback's best friend, just giving him extra time to go ahead, get his reads down, find the open guy. And I think Baker Mayfield potentially gets this win here. Look, he gets a favorable matchup. Defensively, the Browns are underrated. They can get to the quarterback. They can cause havoc. And I think they just have the edge all around here. I do think the Raiders have a bit of a better offense, but I just think matchup-wise, this goes to the Browns. I like the Browns to go on the road, get their second win in a row, and Cleveland to go absolutely nuts once again. On the spread, Raiders -2.5, actually favored. I do think, look, when it's all said and done, it will be a close game. And unfortunately, however, I do think for the Raiders, it's going to go in the favor of the Browns. So give me the Browns on the spread. Continuing on with an NFC divisional clash, Battle of the Birds, Seattle Seahawks at the Arizona Cardinals. Seahawks 1-2, Cards still winless, 0-3. Seattle got that first victory versus the Cowboys at home. Now, though, however, they are on the road, so this makes this game a little bit more interesting. On top of that, Cardinals, you have a new starting quarterback as well, Josh Rosen. But unfortunately, man, I think he's going to have a long day versus the Seattle Seahawks. I realize this defense isn't as good as the Chicago Bears that the Cardinals faced last week, but the Seahawks and Cardinals usually play each other really close, really tough, low-scoring games. And I don't think that's going to be in favor of Josh Rosen. I think this is going to be a defensive matchup somewhere in the realms of 13-15 kind of game. I think it's going to be low scoring. I think it's going to be a really close game when it's all said and done. But I like the Seahawks more here. Look, the Cardinals are struggling all around. David Johnson can't get it going. Maybe it's because just the game planning, the offense just being atrocious right now. But they can't get their biggest playmakers going. Defensively, they're not the same team as last year. Seattle, even though they aren't the same team when they go on the road versus when they're at home, we've seen it so far. I like them more, so it comes down to Russell Wilson versus Josh Rosen. Who would you rather have? Wilson is going to be able to get this victory, no doubts about it. And potentially Doug Baldwin could return. That'll be interesting. I do expect him to probably be limited, so I don't know how much of a factor he'll have. But even without Baldwin, I like the Seattle Seahawks to beat the Arizona Cardinals. Give me the Seattle Seahawks outright on the spread, +3.5. Actually, a little bit high. Like I said, I think this will be a 2 to 3 point margin of victory. So give me the Cardinals on the spread. Next, we have the New Orleans Saints at the New York Giants. Saints 2-1, Giants 1-2. Both these teams coming off of victories. The Saints, man, led by Drew Brees, who's looking like an MVP. Alvin Kamara catching everything thrown his way, running over people. Michael Thomas setting records left and right. Cameron Meredith, Ted Ginn getting in on the action. The Giants, look, they have their own set of playmakers. Odell Beckham, Sterling Shepard, Saquon Barkley, but they've got some questions of that offensive line, unfortunately. And when it's all said and done, I do think this will be a high-scoring game. I can actually see Eli Manning putting up some big numbers here, but I do think New Orleans Saints, Drew Brees, they have the better offense. That's what this is going to come down to. They have more playmakers. Defensively, I don't see either one of these defenses really shutting down the other offense. The Saints defense hasn't shown up yet, and even though the Giants defense does have some playmakers, look, we've seen it before. Drew Brees isn't necessarily fazed by that with all those playmakers. He can put up points against anyone, and I do think that'll be the case here. I anticipate this being a high-scoring game. I think the Saints can make it to about 30 points. We'll see if the Giants can keep up. Ultimately, I like Drew Brees. I think his offense is more balanced, so give me the Saints to go on the road, get this victory. As far as the spread goes, Giants plus 3.5. I think that's a little bit low. I think the Saints can win by at least a touchdown, so give me the Saints on the spread. Next, we have the San Francisco 49ers at the LA Chargers. Both these teams 1-2, but one big difference. The 49ers lost Jimmy Garoppolo for the entire season with an ACL. They've been decimated by injuries offensively. First McKinnon, now Garoppolo. And that injury to Garoppolo is going to take effect on the entire team, obviously offensively, but I do think it'll impact the defense as well. I think the Chargers are going to be able to get this victory without any issues at home. I think they're going to, even with Jimmy Garoppolo, if he had been there, I thought they were going to put up a bunch of points here. Now even more so. I think defensively they're going to dominate the 49ers without Garoppolo. So I like the Chargers in all facets of this game. Give me the Chargers to win, no question about it. The spread, minus 10.5. Maybe a little bit too high, but until we see what the 49ers have without Garoppolo offensively, I feel comfortable taking that spread and saying the Chargers will cover. Getting to Sunday night, we have got the Baltimore Ravens at the Pittsburgh Steelers. AFC divisional clash. Ravens 2-1, Steelers 1-1. Got a huge victory on the road versus the Bucs. Now they return to home in Pittsburgh, where Big Ben shows up and shows out. I think that'll be the case versus the Ravens here. Even though they have a good defense, I actually think this will be a high-scoring affair, especially on the other end because that Pittsburgh secondary has gotten exposed throughout the season so far. I actually think Joe Flacco is in for a big night. And I think it'll be a high-scoring affair, probably pretty close, gets decided later on. But ultimately, I give the edge to the Steelers. Offensively, they have too many weapons. If this were in Baltimore, it'd be different. I'd probably give the edge to the Ravens. Ultimately, I think they split. But since this is in Pittsburgh, I like Pittsburgh to win a close, hard-fought game at the end of the fourth quarter. Give me the Steelers outright on the spread, minus 3.5. And actually, I do think this will probably end up being decided right around a field goal, so I'll take the under on the spread. Finally, getting to Monday Night Football, we've got the Kansas City Chiefs at the Denver Broncos. Chiefs still undefeated 3-0, Broncos 2-1. At home, though, this will be an interesting game. I actually think this will probably be one of the tougher matchups the Chiefs have faced all season, and I wouldn't be surprised if there was a game to go ahead and say upset alert. This would be the one. I think this can end up being a little bit lower scoring than people think. I do think ultimately the Chiefs win. I think offensively they just have more weapons. But man, that Kansas City defense, it has gotten exposed. I think Case Keenum can have a big day. I see a big game for Emmanuel Sanders, Demaryius Thomas. And I think, again, it'll be a close game decided late in the fourth quarter. I anticipate it getting decided by 3, 4, 5 points, somewhere in that neighborhood. I'll give the edge to Patrick Mahomes in that offense. I think they have a little bit more playmaking ability throughout that team. So give me the Chiefs to win this game outright, but it'll be a hard-fought game. Wouldn't be surprised in the end if the Broncos end up winning. The spread, plus 5.5 for the Broncos. I'll actually take the Broncos on the spread. Like I said, I think it'll be a close game. Wouldn't be surprised at all if the Broncos end up winning as well. With that, we finish up our pick'em games. Now looking at our locks of the week, starting with the Buffalo Bills at the Green Bay Packers. Look, give me the Packers. What we saw last week, I think it's more likely that was a fluke on the side of the Bills. I don't think they're going to be able to do it twice in a row. Aaron Rodgers versus Josh Allen, that's what it comes down. Give me Aaron Rodgers. Packers win this game. Then Miami at New England. Look, give me the Patriots. This is going to be the toughest team the Dolphins have faced this season. Patriots offensively, they're more reliable than the Dolphins. I like the Patriots at home to win this game. Then Seattle Seahawks at the Arizona Cardinals. Josh Rosen, new quarterback. I think this is going to be a long day for Rosen. I like the Seattle Seahawks, even though they're on the road, to win this game. Then New Orleans Saints at the Giants. Look, offensively, I just think the Saints are so much better than the Giants. Give me the Saints to win this game on the road. And finally, 49ers at the Chargers. Chargers are going to win this game, probably the biggest lock of the week. Without Jimmy Garoppolo, the 49ers, I think they're going to have a lot of struggles this season. Give me the Chargers to win this game. So with that, we finish up our locks of the week, our pick'em games, and as always, let me know what you guys thought. Do you agree? Do you disagree with these picks? If you have any questions, let me hear it in the comments section. And as always, if you enjoyed, make sure to like, subscribe. I'll see you guys in future videos.